is up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. With me is a Sacramento poker pro who is now residing in Las Vegas, Nevada, is on Nagra, better known as Ozzy on Twitter and on the stream. Welcome to my show, Ozzy.
Well, thank you for having me.
Showing that he likes 9-5. 3-betting ace king, Mr. Ozzy.
Ozzy up 4.8K.
So you've been playing in Sacramento for a while. You're a professional poker player. Let's just get down to the nitty gritty. Talk to me about pre-cheating scandal, Mike Postle, and your interactions with him and stream play.
Oh, we're diving right in, huh?
We're diving right in.
All right. So I've known Mike for, I guess, 3 or 4 years. Just from playing poker on the stream. When the stream started, it was like kind of a big thing in Sac. Mike and I were both playing fairly regularly on it. I think me actually more so than him early on, and then obviously later he became like a staple of the show once it kind of transitioned to like a smaller player pool of regulars. But yeah, I mean, I've played like a good amount with Mike. You know, we used to golf together once in a while here and there.
How's his golf game?
We chat. It's about as good as his poker game.
Nice. So you guys hung out. You had some sort of a friendship. I know you and I actually are friends and were friends since you moved back to Sacramento after college and playing poker professionally. You were playing poker professionally. I would run into you because I was doing commentary on Stones Live. Mm-hmm. What were your thoughts? Let's go back to like when you thought maybe Mike might have been up to something. Like what were you seeing? What kind of triggered that reaction?
Yeah, so the period that I was playing the stream regularly, I don't think anything was ever really going on. I played it for like the first 2 years that it ran quite often. During that time, Mike played occasionally, but not super often. Around the time that I stopped playing the stream regularly was when Mike started playing it all the time, but there's like a bit of an overlap there. And then obviously all of your like Veronica and Friends games, even after I stopped playing the stream regularly, I attended those and Mike was always in those games. I want to say about a year ago is probably the ballpark when I started noticing that things were a little off. I just played a few hands where I got like completely owned. I remember texting some friends that I thought he was cheating, and you know, people kind of like, you know, it's poker. Like people do crazy stuff, and you know, click buttons, and it works sometimes. And we kind of just like brushed it off, and then obviously, I think after like months of just seeing absolute crushing and like clicking every button correctly, this kind of like became like a big part of conversation between like Regs and Sac, and then it's kind of spilled out obviously through you.
Yeah, so let me ask you, just dive a little deeper into that, because for me, one of the things that were key was I know a lot of professional poker players. I'm very ingrained in the poker community in Northern California, and the friends of mine who are successful professional poker players have a cognitive awareness of how they're playing hands, and you're expecting like a prerequisite of a strategy, somewhat of a strategy. Not everyone's going to have the same strategy, but they're able to talk through their hands. They're studying, they're doing, they're managing their money well. And I feel like I didn't see a lot of that from Mike. Like, what was it like talking to Mike about poker?
I think behavior of a lot of winning pros is fairly similar. I think money management is definitely all over the place.
That's true.
Some better than others. I'm not the best.
I mean, you're not going to last long term if you don't have good money management, right?
Yeah, that's accurate. I think that, like you mentioned, I think the way people carry themselves, to some extent, like number of hands played, at least with the good regs, tends to be pretty similar. Obviously, there's some like nitty pros that are like, you know, grinding out a low win rate and maybe not playing the best. But I think of like the better regs in most player pools, they're playing like a similar number of hands. They're studying a similar number of hours. They're playing with a lot of the same guys. Obviously, this is a little bit of an outlier because he's only playing the stream The player pool is extremely small because of that, because a lot of professionals in SAC actually stopped playing the stream. Not necessarily because they thought anything was going on at this time, but the games tended to break right when the stream ended, as if, it was like a big deal TV show. Like people thought they were like showing up for something important. The games would kind of break early, and then you'd be locked. You'd kind of feel obligated to like be locked into your seat for the entire stream. There was bigger games going on for the pros. So I think Mike became a staple in that game, and honestly was probably a decent sized winner in that game, like even without cheating, despite like the crazy VPIP, just because the games were really good and a lot of the best players just vanished out of that small Stones Live player pool.
Did you talk to Mike about hands at all?
No, I never talked to Mike about hands. I mean, the extent of us like hanging out was probably 3 or 4 rounds of golf and then just like chatting at the table.
So let's just go into posting. So I know that I was reaching out to you, reaching out to Andrew, reaching out to Ben and like Matt before I went public with my posting. And you and I were in conversations that entire week after I posted. And you told me that you and Mike Postle had a conversation. Can you give us some information about what that conversation consisted of?
Oh, are you talking about the phone call?
Yeah, the phone call you had with him after I posted, and I believe like you had it the same day, didn't you?
I want to say it was like 2 days later, but
okay.
Yeah, Mike asked if I was free to chat. I figured that there couldn't be any like downside to taking the call. Maybe something positive would come out of it or some information. So Mike called me. He asked if I was the one pushing you to like post about the whole cheating scandal, or who, if I wasn't the one, like who was behind it.
Can I just interrupt real quick for the viewers? Yeah, sure. Because I don't know if the viewers are aware that like you, Jake Rosensteel, and me, the 3 of us were pretty close for a while. And a lot of people accused me of basically doing that. You and Jake pushed me to post those tweets, when in fact that is a complete and utter insult. I have a mind of my own, and like literally no one's gonna make me do anything. I came to this conclusion on my own. Not that I didn't talk to you guys about it, but I did make that move on my own. So it was quite like detrimental to me, or it was insulting to me to think that like the only time I'm going to be making a decision is when you and Jake are influencing me. So the viewers don't know that. The 3 of us used to hang out a lot, and we were best friends for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I moved out of Sacramento like kind of during this whole scandal, and then you moved to San Jose, so like we were all still close but talked a lot less frequently, especially about poker.
So go back to the phone call now. I just wanted to give the viewers some background. So he said that he thought that you were pushing me to post that.
Yeah, he asked if like who was behind it. I like alluded to the fact that like everyone had been talking about it. I did think that a lot of the hands you played were suspicious, but that you made the decision to post the whole like cheating thing on your own.
Right.
We talked a little bit about the games, and I thought like the biggest takeaway from the phone call was that he never once said to me like, hey man, like look, I know we're not super close, but like we chat at the table, we've like been golfing buddies a couple times, like I'm telling you like man to man or whatever, like I'm not cheating, I've never cheated in the stream. We went like the entire like 30-minute phone call without that like once coming out of his mouth. He talked a lot about how he was just way better than most people realize, and he's been crushing for a long time, and most other pros don't play as many hands as him, so it's just hard to wrap our heads around it. And it was more like a defense of like how good he is and like justifying like these absurd win rates, rather than like just it'd be one thing if you're like, hey man, look, I've just been running really fucking hot and like I play more hands than than most of you guys, so it just looks insane. But I'm telling you, I'm like innocent, but it didn't come across like that at all.
So I posted some of the things that he had texted me the day I posted my stuff on Twitter, and it was kind of the same thing, just talking about how good he is, how his 16-year history of playing exactly the same and just having enormous win rates because he's just that good.
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate at all. I mean, I haven't played a ton of volume with him, obviously, just like streams is like just a few hours at a time. But there was definitely like a tipping point where I think he started playing more hands. He had always been like pretty loose. I'll give him like that as far as him alluding to like, hey, I've always played like this. He's always played a lot of hands, but he definitely played like probably twice as many after. I think he went from like mid 30s or like high 30s to like 50% of hands.
Yeah,
Maybe
so
more
I hear a
here and there.
different story from people who played with him regularly. Jake actually was telling me that he was like knitting sweaters off stream, like he was completely different. And when you look at videos of him, even on the stream, when he's not in God mode, he's just like a reg, 1-3 player who's like looks like he might be just breaking even in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely still playing like a decent amount of hands at smaller stakes. Maybe like when he plays like 5-5-10 off stream or something, he's playing tighter. But I'll give him that. Like he's always played a ton of hands in smaller games. I think also like a big thing that drags out something like this going on without anyone noticing is the stream games are really soft. A lot of pros aren't playing them, and they play bigger than people realize. And so if you're even like a marginally winning player, which I think Mike was winning in these games just because of how soft they were, and like at one time, maybe being like a pretty good player, and then just his background, I think it's very reasonable to say that he was probably winning in the smaller streams, but obviously playing way too many hands and definitely not going to be the biggest winner, especially in lineups where there's actually like pros coming out and playing uh, in some of the bigger games. But I think in the smaller games, he probably was getting away with playing a ton of hands and winning, but obviously not possible to win at the rates he was winning at.
I think sometimes a lot of his play was deemed like a heater, and we would never see, no one was watching every single stream, and no one was obviously watching when he would play off stream if he did play. I just wanted to ask you, since you were playing in all the big games in Sacramento when you were playing professionally out here. So I know in the Sacramento poker community, there are a lot of juicy games going on, and you can pretty much go to Thunder Valley, Capital Casino, Stones, and find a very good game, sometimes like a 5-10 or a 10-25. Um, Mike was noticeably absent from those games, I would say, in the last year of the live stream being on air. Um, did you notice that? Did you know that he started playing more just on the live stream and less off stream?
Yeah, definitely. So I think in the last year and a half, like a few really big games sprouted up in SAC. They didn't last long, a few months at a time, but we had games as big as 50-100 no limit running for like 3 months, 4 months maybe, and then we had 25-50 PLO running like once or twice a week for maybe the same stretch, like a couple months. Um, and then there would always be a 10 and a quarter or 10-20 game on Thursdays. And Mike never showed up for any of these. I mean, it makes sense to some extent in the really big games. Like, not everyone feels comfortable playing like super high stakes, or they have family and stuff. But if you're just like this much of a crusher and like just the absolute best, you find a way to get in there. Like, or someone wants to stake you for the game. I think if you're truly winning at like the rates that he was claiming, to win at and just be the best, then you'd find your way into those. And at the very, very least, you'd be grinding like the Thursday 5-10-20s and the 5-10s that run off stream, and not just be like exclusively playing basically 2-5 no limit all the time.
Right, right, and just on stream. And the pattern developed slowly. Like he was playing off stream, he was invited to all these games, and then slowly he moved away from off stream and like literally as soon as the cameras stopped, he would pick up and leave.
Yeah, I mean, Sac is not that big of a city. I mean, where some of these bigger games were running, and Stones is maybe like 10 to 15 minutes of driving. I know once in particular, Matt was chatting about a big game running at Capitol, and Mike just straight up denied like knowing the existence of the game. Like this was more recently, I guess, after like things started being like I guess gossip started going around and he heard about it. But I think everyone in Northern California knew about these games.
Everyone knows about Capital Casino, the Thursday night games. Like it's all over social media, and it's like one
Yeah,
of the best kept secrets. Capital Casino is one of the best kept secrets of Sacramento.
yeah. I think when like when 2-5 No Limit is generally speaking the biggest game that runs in a city for like a year and a half, and then a 50-100 sprouts up, like people definitely know about it, and especially if you're in the poker community. So to just never show up, not come look at the game at least, or like put your name on the wait list and try to get in, and then just deny that you even knew it was running is just like absurd.
So let's go into, so you and I spoke before the show talking about like the things we wanted to discuss, and we wanted to discuss commentary. And I know that, just give me your perspective on the commentary. Like, I think there were a lot of variables involved in why this wasn't caught sooner, and one of them was commentary. So
Yeah,
just give me your
absolutely.
perspective on the commentary.
So I think at the very beginning when the stream sprouted up, you and Jake were like the main commentators. I think you did like probably 80% of the streams,
Right.
and viewership was a lot higher. There was like I think thousands of people watching, and eventually, uh, you guys got busy. Jake started playing poker full time. You took a job in Silicon Valley and moved up. Even before that, you were moving up in Sacramento, and we're a lot busier. And the compensation just wasn't worth the time spent there.
Right.
Uh, I think Stones never really wanted to pay for good commentary. Like, I'm not exactly sure how much commentators were being paid, but I want to say it was like $25 or $30 an hour, and like no one like that's beating the games is going to spend time doing
Yeah.
commentary.
And I just want to say that I met with Justin a few times in the back of the casino telling him, like, look, we really need some technical analysis. The show like is yearning for that. Your viewers want that. We first of all need to get some poker pros in the booth and pay them what they think they deserve. They're like a good hourly. And then color commentary is something that I could do, or like a lot of the other commentators could do. And he just didn't find the value in having a professional poker player in the booth.
Yeah, I think having technical analysis like only goes so far. You don't want the show to be dry, but I think
Right.
viewers want to hear someone talking about the hands. Not just like pure table talk. I think that's fun, but I think a little bit of strategy here and there is good. And it doesn't have to be every stream, but someone thrown in the mix, like maybe once a week or every other week, would probably
At
have
least
helped
for
the
the
show.
bigger games. I really
Yeah,
was trying to
exactly.
get Jake to come in the booth with me anytime there was a bigger game. It was really hard after a while because his hourly was too good outside the booth. So that's one thing that that bothers me, is that Justin didn't have a really good understanding about poker, and that like he didn't distinguish between a color commentator and a technical commentator, and he didn't know how to distinguish between those two things. And unfortunately, it ended up always being two color commentary, and he almost like threw anyone in the booth. And to him,
Yeah,
it was just a body.
I think the biggest filter for like doing commentary on the stream was just if you're comfortable in front of a camera. I don't
Right.
think there was like any real like poker knowledge required, and it's not a dig at anyone commentating. It's not their profession, but I think if someone that was at least fairly competent or at least winning at low stakes was regularly in the booth watching these games, this probably would have been uh, not necessarily avoided, but like maybe people would start talking about this a lot sooner. but I think there was like a pretty big void in anyone finding hands out of the ordinary that were commentating.
Right. And so there's a few problems with that. Like none of us were regularly in the booth. It was like a lot of people rotating through. So none of us watched Mike Postle on a regular basis. And then there was this portion of Justin who turned Mike Postle into this like elaborate, like bigger than like a god in poker. And they had all these memes. And Justin really wanted to sell this to the audience. And he would sit me down. He would sit down other commentators like, look, we don't want to have anything negative said about poker players. Don't criticize them. Let's make the show fun. Also, when you're watching a boring, like poker generally is boring, like watching people fold for hours is tough to do. And so when one hand happens every half an hour and it's a big, crazy hand, everyone gets excited. And I think it's organic when it's exciting. It's not just like, oh, Justin told me to be excited. Like, I think it was genuinely fun to watch these hands play out, but they also didn't make sense. Like for me, it all didn't make sense, especially given the variable of Mike Postle being unable to cognitively tell us about his process through a hand.
I think just to like somewhat defend the commentators because of the turnover, like how infrequent the same person would be in the booth and being told to like fade criticism. I think fading criticism like maybe set this up a little bit because commentators are almost told to just like justify every play to like not make someone
Right.
feel bad. And then when Mike is a regular and he's just crushing, like, and they're like just like told to justify every play, even if it's like completely absurd, they're just like left to think that this guy's just the best, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if they're not playing poker for a living, they're and thinking through a lot of these spots, it's yeah, I mean, I think they even noticed sometimes.
What?
Oh, the graphics are wrong?
Dude,
Oh,
don't
what
ruin
a
my
letdown.
highlight.
Unbelievable.
Oh, the graphics are wrong.
Does he have 8-9? Taylor, does he have 8-9?
Don't even tell me the graphics are wrong. I'm so much happier if the graphics are right here.
But then Justin would change the cards, and I say this often. I think like off stream when they would meet, I think Justin was giving Postle crap about the way he was playing. Like occasionally you have to call, occasionally you have to lose money. Otherwise, it looks too crazy. But I don't think Mike was listening. I think his ego got the best of him, and then Justin had to quickly go and change the cards.
Yeah, I mean, the scary part about this is like if someone did this like properly, quote unquote, like or like did this
They
efficiently,
could have got away with it.
they could run with it like forever. Like they could make 300K
Just play proper
like
pre-flop.
playing 2-5 every year, like, and like no one would ever know. But yeah, I think the ego thing definitely came into play because the stream was just hyping him up as being the best, and then I think that just made him feel more comfortable playing tons of hands because he could justify it because he's just so good post flop. And I think
Right.
they kind of like played hand in hand.
So now we're talking about Justin. I know that you spoke to me about some issues you had with Justin in a tournament, or the way there was like a free roll tournament for players after they played a certain amount of hours. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. So they called it a players appreciation tournament. Basically what it was is you played like, I want to say something like 80 hours, you got like a $200 voucher towards this $400 buy-in. If you played like 100, you got like a $300 voucher. If you played like 120 or something, you got like the full voucher for this tournament. And they equated the hours to money on the tickets. So it'd say like, 120 hours equals, $400 ticket. And it was like a 40K free roll or a players appreciation tournament. I was under the impression only people that qualified like hours wise would play the tournament, but I guess you can't have, that's like considered a private tournament. So they had to allow people to buy in for cash also. And long story short, it was like a smaller tournament. There was good games going on in SAC. Myself and a couple friends ended up just putting horses in the tournament instead of playing it. And a friend of mine had their horse final table it, and so we went over there to like go have a few drinks and watch the final table. And I noticed that like first place was pretty small. It was something like 7 or 8K, but when I looked up at the board, there was like 170 runners, and I was expecting that would be like something ballpark like 65K, and first should have been like 12 or 13K. And I thought it was a little odd. So I like pulled out my calculator and I like double checked that I was like not missing something. And what I realized is I went to the front booth. There was like a flyer up for like the Players Appreciation Tournament. It was still sitting up there, and I looked at the back and like the small print, and basically the cash entries that didn't qualify through the hours were being raked at like an absurd rate. I want to say it was like 40%, and they ended up using those buy-ins to like offset the 40K that they had to put up basically for the free roll. So rather than adding these cash buy-ins to the
On top.
40K and like paying out like 60K or whatever, they were just using it to like mitigate their cost. And I think they were only like a few players away from paying out less. Like even with the absurd rake, I think there were only a few players away from paying out 40K, but like receiving over 40K in buy-ins. So I ended up like talking to management about this. It was hard to talk to Justin about it, like while he was running the tournament. But I went to management and like told them my concerns. This was like a big like oversight that no one caught this or thought it was like unethical.
And Justin was the tournament director at the time.
Yeah, he put this together, I'm pretty sure. And at the very least was like running the tournament. I think.
Well, I mean, being the tournament director, you're responsible for that. It doesn't matter if you put it together or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no one like realizing that this was like unethical or like unreasonable was like kind of crazy. Management ended up telling me they'd never run like a tournament like this again, and like that they messed up. But it's not like they like added the money back to the prize pool and like paid everyone that final table like another 30% or whatever it was.
So I think like a lot of the biggest leak in this whole story is Justin's inability to understand poker, and that's why he thought he could get away with this, because he doesn't understand how poker players think. He doesn't understand what their needs are, and like he was obviously missing that in the room where poker players were complaining about how he was handling the list and how he was handling things in general. And so it like I just wanted to hear your thoughts, because I think that adds a little bit more relevance to like why he thought he could get away with this.
Yeah. So I think the player pool for the stream is a big reason that this kind of ran for so long. The list was like almost exclusively under Justin's control. I know a few times, like I said earlier, I show up and you think you have a seat and you don't, or you get pushed down the list, or some people would show up late and still get locked in. And it was such a small player pool playing regularly, and the games were very good. And like, it's not like a dig at anyone playing the streams, but a lot of these guys are just like not very good. And I don't think that they're going home and watching, watching back and noticing that anything is off. And I think that because Justin's not like a good poker player, I don't think that he's critical of how hands are being played either. And I don't think that they thought anything would look bizarre if someone's just completely crushing and they're painted to be like the best player in the game.
I would like, let me just tell you how I think this happened. I think this was a slow progress. Like if we're looking for absolutes, I always say this, we shouldn't be, because it progressed to something else. And I think initially he had the live stream and wanted to promote the room and wanted to, bring more attention to stones. And then it slowly progressed to, okay, they started cheating and now they're making a lot of money. And now they need to cheat in the most conspicuous way possible. And that's, let's not have any pros in the booth. Let's not have our viewership increase and have people bring potential awareness to this. Let's not promote when Berkey comes into the game. And let's, make sure no cell phones. The last time I was there were no cell phones allowed. So you're not allowed to even promote in the room. And I think it was just, it turned into them just trying to bring people in to like take money off of them, to fleece them.
I mean, viewership definitely like declined after you and Jake stopped commentating. So I think a lot of the viewers are like local rec players, and there's maybe only like 100 average viewers, I think, during
Yeah.
this stretch that Mike was cheating. So the people watching the stream regularly are not the type that are going to catch this necessarily. So I think that's a big factor in like how it could drag on for a year. I think if any of if a lot of like SAC pros are still playing the streams and then going back to watch themselves and like recap hands, they might have noticed something, but the player pool is so small and like almost exclusively rec players.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us stopped watching the stream. Like when it was first a thing, we were so excited and we'd all watch ourselves after. But I know that I never even watched after I did commentary because I was like, no, I can't watch myself for 4 hours. I look like an idiot. So
Yeah, I mean, generally I would just run it back with like the sound on mute and just like fast forward to hands I was playing.
right.
I don't think that many people were like actually diving into like the videos.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just like, it's unfortunate because I started the show and it was like a part of my life and my game was there. It was just like really unfortunate that it had to end like this. And I never did this with the intention of trying to shut down a casino or a live stream. I really just wanted them to take Mike off and do an investigation. That was like my original intent to go to Justin. So it's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
they definitely dropped the ball just in like how they handled it. Like the so-called investigation that happened and like cleared everything. Like we never, we never got any evidence of that happening. I think that the investigation was maybe like management asking Justin if he thought anything was weird or any cheating was going on, and that was about it. Because I just don't see how that wouldn't be like produced to like clear Stone's name. Stones was by far my favorite place to play. I think they ran games really well. It was the most comfortable. The floors and dealers are like the best, but I think that management dropped the ball in their oversight of the stream for sure.
Yeah, and and I say this all the time. Art, who is the general manager of Stones, brought me into his office several times for like my behavior and things that I said or tweets that I would respond to someone and have like a fight on Twitter, and someone would at Stones and try to get me in trouble. But always like
Justin ran Stone's Twitter as well, right?
Yeah,
So
Justin runs all.
that's like a bit of a direct conflict with you guys.
Yeah, Justin ran all of the Stones Twitter. They have 2 accounts. But Art would bring me back into the office and like he was always very reasonable and he was always very polite and kind and like never he definitely was a true businessman, but I think his downfall was just trusting Justin indefinitely, trusting him at all costs. Like he never listened. I know he would listen to me, but I know he would always side with Justin. I remember I had like a problem with the way Justin handled something, and he was like, "Well, thanks for letting me know," but nothing was ever going to change. He
Yeah,
stood by
I mean,
Justin's side.
the big issue is like people managing and running poker rooms are like good at like being floors and like managing a business. They're not good poker players, and they're like almost like completely unaware of like what's going on in actual games. So I think even if someone was back there in charge of like reviewing footage or like watching the streams for like security, it like could easily have still been like overlooked. But I think the lack of having like an outside source look into it when cheating allegations are like being talked about around the room, and like well respected players in SAC are complaining, and employees like you and Jake and other people are worried about security. I think having an outside source look at this a lot sooner could have like completely cleared them, but I think they dropped the ball on how they handle it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I had it when I posted. I was furious for about a week. I was dreading posting it, but I thought nothing was being done. I thought Justin was incompetent and would never do anything about it. you know what's funny? One thing I don't mention very often is I remember going to Justin the first time and telling him that I thought maybe Mike was cheating and there was gossip about him cheating. And like
Mhm.
literally next week, Mike had his own poker show. Mike was hosting
Are
a
you talking
game.
about his interview or the actual game?
No, the actual game, Postle. You know how he had Postle and Pals or whatever?
Oh, okay. I'm not
It
sure if
literally,
I was even here for
yeah,
that.
he was, I had Veronica and Friends, Harlan had Harlan and Victims, and then Postle and Pals or whatever. And like that happened like the week after I said Mike's probably cheating.
Yeah, I
So it's
mean
like,
the
now
interview
looking
of
back, well, obviously, because Justin was involved.
the interview of like Mike reviewing his hands as like
You got to be
um
kidding.
to dismiss exactly to like dismiss everyone's concerns was just hilarious. Like
Yeah, I mean, I was watching that. I'm like, is anyone buying this? Is this a thing? Like, is someone out there saying, yeah, Mike's a crusher. Look at this. This all makes sense. Like, I was floored. I was flabbergasted. Like, this can't be real life. This is
yeah, I
not
mean,
happening.
any like good winning poker player that went and watched that video is not going to take away like, oh, this guy's just the best. Like, look at how he
You don't
talks
even
about
have to be
hands
a
and
good
stuff.
poker player. He's like, Mike, what are you thinking right now? He's like, I wasn't really thinking anything at that point. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
What do you think? An ace king, ace queen?
I'm not really thinking at this point.
So I don't even think it took like a ton of poker knowledge. So
Yeah, and I think having him on to like talk about hands and like sitting there with him like kind of walking him through it was just like awkward, and it didn't seem like he was like naturally going through it.
this is the narcissist leak. They think that what they're selling everyone will buy, and they have no empathy for other people's opinions or views. So he couldn't see that it looked like a big pile of bullshit. So
Yeah,
at least it did to me.
I don't know if they like thought that that was going to just be sufficient to like put everyone's like concerns to bed, but obviously it was like not going to help them.
Well, thank you very much for this interview. I'm sure that you're missing Northern California, especially since
I'm actually home. I'm actually home right now visiting for the holidays.
shut up. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I just got in yesterday.
You're in Roseville. What's up, Roseville? Shout out to Roseville. Well, I will see you on New Year's Eve. Ben and I are coming out to Las Vegas for New Year's, and we will
Yep,
see you
sounds
and
good.
Ella.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing the interview. And are you getting down to are you going to go to Stones while you're here?
I am not going to go to Stones. I'm not going to go to any poker room while I'm here. I'm only here for a few days. Going to enjoy the time with friends and stuff. I'm playing a lot less poker now, anyways, but definitely not going to be swinging by Stones.
All right. Well, have a wonderful Christmas, and thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Thanks.